that's, you know, it's something that we really don't know so much about how it's actually impacting our bodies and minds. And with the resurgence in psychedelic study, they've, you know, started to really look at the different benefits that you know it can have for you, you know, and this is specifically psilocybin, you know, and that with the New York Psilocybin Action Committee, we put together a couple, like, you know, flyers and some bullet points. And this is just like break the cycle of addiction, manage depression, allow trauma to be processed, negate migraines and cluster headaches, relieve irritable bowel syndrome, prevent obsessive compulsive disorder behaviors, ease existential dread for terminally ill patients, facilitate the perception of beauty, promote neuroplasticity, improve emotional balance, boost creativity, increase memory retrieval, be anti-inflammatory, and enhance the effectiveness of psychotherapy. It's absolutely impressive how many different ways they can impact your wellness. And, you know, this is just like psilocybin. I mean, at the mushroom farm, like, you know, I have like untold libraries of all these different mushrooms that are, you know, immunomodulating, functional adaptogenic, you know, things that can help your body create a homeostasis and stay in a stress-free, you know, healthy lifestyle. And it really is impressive. And supposedly psilocybin is not adaptogenic because they say it can't produce any harm, but like, I don't think there's any toxicity to it. And like, you know, Ambra, like you were saying, it's just like that wavy feel. And you know, if you're macro dosing, if you're taking, you know, a higher dose, you're going to get, you know, a different message than if you're just taking a little bit, like, you know.
Absolutely.
And that's like my daily regimen, my wellness routine. I take some lion's mane, I take some cordyceps, and I take some psilocybin. So I'm taking just a little bit of psilocybin, you know, not quite enough to like knock me out a little bit, but like the lion's mane helps me, you know, stay focused and gives me that cognitive boost. The cordyceps gives me a little bit of energy, and the psilocybin just kind of keeps me open.
Yeah.
So it's really it's amazing.
You do psilocybin every day? Every day?
Not every day. No, I follow a different like regimen.
Okay, because I'll take it for like a good 2 or 3 days, you know, especially when I'm struggling. And then like I won't need it again for, you know, maybe a few days, or maybe even sometimes I go as far as a month, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
I
also.
I'm sorry. Like I was saying, mainly because I give my friends my stuff, and then it's like I got nothing. But
yeah, no,
I that for yourself, self-care.
I'm learning that. I'm learning that because I'm learning that because I gotta at least have a few micros, you know, just a microdose. I mean, a macrodose, I do that like once a year, maybe twice. I don't know, once a year. So
yeah, well, and it depends on, you know, like what your intention is. Like, you know, I went to Roger Waters the other night, and I didn't exactly take a macro dose, but I definitely didn't take a micro dose. So just like, you know, it's a little enhancer, and it just made the music and the lights and the lasers and everything so much more magical. And I was just like, damn. And it was a chocolate bar kind of thing, and I was like, I took 4 little cubes, and I was like, boy, I'm glad I did not take any more, because I would have gotten introspective.
Somebody gave me a chocolate like truffle that had like 700 milligrams of, I don't know what mushroom it was, but it was a microdose. It was considered a microdose, but that shit had me like, I don't know what it was. It must have been like penis heavy or something. It was something heavier, on the heavier side. So like 700 milligrams of it, you know, is more like a double of it. You know what I mean?
A golden teacher.
Nah, no way. Golden teachers, I am completely functional, and it's great for my ADHD. You know, like it keeps me really like kind of like clear and motivated and like focused on what I have to do, you know. But when that one I was walking around Atlantic City on that thing.
When I first started microdosing, I actually started microdosing on Ambra's shrooms. Her capsules. She had offered these capsules. So I was involved. Hey guys, I'm Pilar. I was involved in a raid, unfortunately, and that year some folks had been like take some shrooms. They said they were vegan shrooms, and I was confused. Um, and I was also at the point like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to see pink elephants. I'm not ready for that. Who's gonna be around? Like this is what I went through, and I took it anyway because we had like a little ceremony in my house, and I felt at that time like I didn't feel anything. But as I reflect back, I think I felt some. I felt the things that you are talking about. The sounds were more enhanced, colors, right? Because we had music, we had like these, neon lights going on. But then when I started microdosing with Amber's capsules, then I started in July of 2020, and then that's when a lot of things that I guess we'll get into have changed. But I was microdosing every other day, or like sometimes it was every other day, or I skipped 2 days, and I did it. But it's why I'm here now. I'm like
Yeah.
fascinated.
Yeah,
Um,
the microdoses are why I'm even sitting here in front of you right now. It's crazy. Like it's been so helpful in my life. Like I feel like I'm alive. I feel like I'm living my life, like really the person I'm supposed to be, and that wasn't for a long time. I had trauma. I got assaulted on a job site. So I was like a different person, and I was spiraling, and I was drinking alcohol and stuff. So it was a long road to get to here where with the mushrooms, and now living my purpose. Now I have to grow these things. I can't not, like I have no choice. Like please don't ever tell me I can't. you know so I don't know, but yeah, P, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and psilocybin is an amazing tool, but I really, like, I'm not growing any psilocybin, but I grow all the other mushrooms. So we have turkey tail, which is an anti-carcinogenic. We have reishi, which is, is helps fight Alzheimer's and seasonal allergies. And I think that the fungi kingdom is something that we really don't understand well. And I really hope that the next few decades we start to really explore what mushrooms can do, not only for each, ourselves individually, but for the world as a whole, because they can help so many different ways. And if you've read Stammeats' Mycelium Running, he talks about mycoremediation, and psilocybin can extract heavy metals from contaminated soils, unlike other mushrooms, oysters can extract petroleum-based things. So it's like, what else can they do?
No, you're absolutely right. There's a purpose for it, and I feel like mushrooms are the great assist. Like they help everything become just a little better. And they do it by branching out. It's that hyphae thing. It's that the mycelial network thing.
Mhm.
And when you look at the way they grow and stuff, and I agree with you as far as the other mushrooms. I do medicinal mushrooms. I do reishi. I do lion's mane. I want to get into growing cordyceps. I have a book on how to do it, and I just need to crack into it. It's from William Padilla Brown. Um, yeah, he's big on the corgis, so I'm trying to get deep into that too. I do it all. I get bored, so I jump from one to the other. But I don't even remember what the fuck I was talking about. Go ahead.
Well, and I guess if just to stick with like the neural plasticity effect of the psilocybin, that's one of the things. So I, as a mushroom farmer, I vend at places, and we have all of our gourmet and medicinal mushrooms that we're legally allowed to sell. But I will say 70 to 80% of the people come up and ask about
They
psilocybin.
want the mushrooms.
That's what they want. They really do. And so I had this one guy just last Saturday come up and, he was like, oh, I heard about this and I want some for my friend. I'm like, okay, buddy. But I really got into a great discussion because he was like, why does it help with depression? And one of the things that I have gone back to repeatedly is that often with depression or anxiety or these things, we're repeating thoughts over and over again. And so if you think of your thoughts as like a vinyl record with grooves carved into them, and your attention is that needle going around the groove, going around the groove, going around the groove. When you're repeating those negative thoughts, you're stuck in that groove. And psilocybin will often help fill the grooves in a little bit so that you can rewrite your thought patterns. And that's how you can help get out of those depressive and anxious thoughts. And that's also one of the things that they're studying for psilocybin as a weight loss tool, because it's, you can really look at how you are over consuming and, understand what it is that you're doing when you're taking, eating imperfect foods, like, oh, I'm fatty foods for like 6 meals out of the week, and maybe I shouldn't be doing that. But it's, it's easy to say that, but it's that taking a step. And I feel like psilocybin and some of these other nootropics really help you take that step.
I agree.
And I could definitely, I feel like I could attest to that. Since microdosing of July of 2020, I have lost weight. And people are always asking me how. And I'm like, I'm microdosing, I'm smoking weed, I'm drinking more water and eating more fruits. That's all I can say. I'm not, because I think also, with weight gain, especially with women, they talk about, stress and our hormones could also add to gainage. And I think with taking psilocybin, because I'm, healing and I am, breaking through this matrix of a fuckery of a world, right, we're living in. And also I notice when I've taken either micro or even macro, I always want fruits or vegetables. So it's like I feel like it's always calling me to eat the part of the earth, like not to eat the fatty or greasy shit that's gonna make me upset. And that's like, and I've already been like accustomed to fasting, drinking a lot of water. I've already been, on this mindset of, looking at what's in what I'm eating for a long time. And I think while I'm microdosing, it's just enhancing my consciousness of why I need to eat this way. And that's part of why I've lost weight. Cause and I rode bike here and there and I walk a lot, but I can't say that I was actively doing any exercise. And then the other thing that I minimized was my alcohol intake. I was a functioning alcoholic and I could still drink here and there. I still drink, but not in the aggressive way. And I notice now too, I don't have, I'll sometimes I'm just like, I'll pour a drink and then I don't finish it. Like I'll pour a glass of wine and I'm like, oh shit, I just wasted a glass of wine. But at the end of the day, I think that's beneficial because I also worry about, for myself, Alzheimer's and dementia. And so what I've been doing is incorporating lion's mane into my regimen. And when I make capsule for folks, I give them lion's mane and psilocybin. Because I think also, right, it's just the health, it's all healthy fungi.
Yeah. Well, while we're on this subject, I mean, this is part of my story that I'll share if you'd like later as well. But, I used a good healthy dose of psilocybin about a year ago, and without the specific intent to lose weight, I came back from that trip and I lost 65 pounds over the past year. And it was work. It's not a magic thing. It wasn't the mushrooms that caused the weight loss. It was something that changed in my operating system, and I attribute it all to that. But now when I do smaller doses, you're right, Pilar, I just want like green grapes and I want broccoli and I want water. And I too, I'm wasting a ton of alcohol that I pour for myself out of habit, and I just don't feel like drinking it. So it's pretty amazing, but I'll share a wider story about that if you'd like later, abbreviated. Avery, you were going to say something though.
I mean, I don't know how much time, Pammy, you wanted us to take up talking about how wonderful mushrooms are, because I mean, we can go on like, you know, shiitake with its, you know, but
Kill you, heal you, or feed you, right? Those are the three things. Like they're magical. And I think, you know,
They are.
I just cut you off, but I just want to encourage folks to get out of that mindset, that stigma that I once was at, right? That all these things, even though I'm seeing that more and more different in my community, like people are more open to it, but it is time to get off what I like to call the hamster wheel, and, you know, go see what else is there. It's not just the wheel.
yeah, and I will definitely say now that we have been selling our, you know, gourmet and other medicinal mushrooms for 2 years now at a variety of vending opportunities and right here in our store, I think that the stigma that surrounded specifically psilocybin is starting to erode, because the vast range of people who are looking for it, either for themselves or for their friends or for their 90-year-old parents who are transitioning, you know, really run the gamut. And some of them come in, you know, absolutely desperate, and it's heartbreaking to me that I cannot help them. And that's one of the reasons why we started this, the New York Psilocybin Action Committee, is so that we can create a system that is accessible for people, you know, and not, because I know, especially me as a, you know, cis white male, I have very little fear of repercussion, or like finding some, you know, going out, it's not gonna impact me as much. Whereas, you know, like someone who is, say, in their 70s, that doesn't have like connections in, you know, the right neighborhoods, but is suffering from crippling depression, won't know how to like find the healing that they need. And if we create a system that allows for that, then, you know, really we can help benefit people.
I agree. I agree. I'm excited about mushrooms for a whole lot of reasons. So, you know, besides the psilocybin, you know, I'm also like, just everything that we've been finding out about what is fungi and how it plays a part in the environment, but also how you can use it to, so like I'm excited about them using it as a leather substitute. You know what I mean? Like I want a mushroom couch. I want a couch that is made out. That's what I want my couch made out of. And when I die, I want to go to the mushrooms. Like I want them. No, there's a company is doing it, but fuck it, I'm gonna sign on. I'm about to get stock in that company, right?
Oh,
like
know.
that's. I want a mushroom to consume it. I want the mushroom to grow, and I wanted somebody to, you know, thrive from it, like the environment, whatever it is. Like that's how I want to go. Do not put me in a wrapped up box. Don't do any of that. Don't.
Yeah, no, I even tried to talk to a funeral home, local funeral home, about letting me do some like come in and like partner up and do some like offer healing ceremonies at the funeral, because a lot of the people in my community, include I used to do this myself, we go to the funeral, but we don't stay inside the funeral home. We go in front, we smoke, we drink, or we go to the down the block to the bar. And typically what happens at a few funerals that I've been to, unfortunately, there's some fighting because now alcohol is involved. And so I, you know, tried to partner, like maybe offer, you know, a space to bring some tea. But, you know, the owner, you know, was from Albania and was not really interested. I mean, I may have to revisit it now, being that there's all this media around it, but this was like in 2020, you know, because there were a lot before they right after they opened it back to funerals, being people allowed to be going to funerals. Because like I witnessed how busy he was during the season, but also just my experience of going to funerals. But I think that that's another thing. If you know, one burials and then also the memorials, having the ceremony at memorials.
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea and a perfect segue into the next portion where we talk about psilocybin's mental health benefits. We have the therapeutic use theory or the recreation. The ceremony you're talking about there was mushrooms used in a way that can help, you know, grieving people with their loved ones. And that is an incredible idea. I think that's something I've definitely done on my own. You know, my grandmother passed a couple of years ago. It was definitely something that I took solace in. It really helped me to not necessarily come to terms because she lived a full life and she had a beautiful life. And, but you know, anytime you lose someone, you're still grieving. And mushrooms really helped me grieve. It helped me to just open my eyes to not necessarily that they weren't there anymore, but to how much they affected me and how much they gave to the people around.
Yeah, and that's exactly, you know, because and even when recently last summer a friend of mine died, and I was taking psilocybin, I was offering my friends like, hey, you should take this today, don't drink, you know, really encouraging them not to drink but to take some psilocybin, because the person who had passed away, he was coming to my house, and a lot of my close friends didn't know that he would visit, and we would have like these really long conversations, and he would like stand there and eat shrooms like potato chips in front of me, like while we're just having conversation. And he's like, just, you know, I mean, we're having such great conversation. I'm just like baffled. He's just like popping them in like chips. And, you know, so I felt deeply inside that he would have wanted to see his friends. And because the way he passed, he was under the influence. Another close friend of ours who was murdered 10 years ago, he was under the influence. And, you know, so alcohol, at least amongst my friends and in my community and in my culture, right, has been somewhat violent. And you know, it's now that I'm also, the psilocybin is helping me really see more and more, right? Because I didn't see this before. Now I'm like, oh, you know, tying it to how it affects our mental health, how it creates, you know, depression. It's a downer. And it's also why I encourage folks who get shrooms from, you know, get some psilocybin from me, that they do not drink alcohol while they are, you know, they have some intention, and that they're doing it with a clean spirit, right? Just, I say, hey, if you're doing marijuana, you know, because I smoke a lot of marijuana. And so, yeah, but I just like encourage like the synthetic, because alcohol at the end of the day, in my opinion, is synthetic. It's not, I know there's a natural process to it, but I've noticed it makes it
something to it.
violent. And some other drugs too that have been sensitized, like cocaine, you know, some people can become very violent or very depressed after doing it. And so I just always encourage folks to do that. But I think that for me, when I offer healing to the people in the community or in the city, it's really to help them also, like, help them understand to this magical thing, not to tell them like, hey, because this is their journey, but I really like to talk about the benefits, and why even more so than ever, especially now after dealing with a pandemic and still dealing with a lot of the after effects of it, why we need to be healing in a healthy way, because what we're going through, you know, I'm 41 years old, and so I've lived through a lot of things, and I know my parents and my grandparents and so on and so before that, I've lived through a lot. And as we talk about generational trauma, that's a real thing. And then on top of your own trauma, like I said, I was involved in a raid where, you know, loud sounds sometimes still get to me, or like if someone randomly bangs on my door, and which that barely happens, but sometimes some people knock like they're the police, and it's like really scary to me sometimes. But psilocybin has helped me deal with that. And I've even testified, at City Hall here in New York City. It wasn't regarding psilocybin, but it was regarding the budget here in the city. And you may have heard the mayor has given a lot of money to the police department and has cut a lot of funding for education and social service, company organizations and legal service providers that do a lot of work in the city and run the city and the state for free. And so I testified, one, that, that budget should not be cut, but also that there should be, if we're going to give more money to the police, it should be for psilocybin therapy, because honestly, the police need shrooms. They need mushrooms. They need the gourmet. They need the psilocybin. They need marijuana. They need something to help them be reintegrated into society, because they are just fucked up. And I don't want to say that they're all, but yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
One of the people that have approached us through NYPAC, I won't say their name, but was a Army Special Ops in the Mideast, a state trooper captain working with the governor, and a 9/11 first responder. And they were struggling with their trauma, and one of their Marine friends turned them on to cannabis gummies, and it blew their mind that these were not the demon things that they were brainwashed into thinking they were. And so they are now microdosing psilocybin to cope with their trauma. And I'm trying to convince them to be a little bit more outspoken, but they're really afraid of the impact that they might have, just because of the level of integration that they had with the system. But I think if someone like that actually came forward with their use and experience and said to all these other police that are like, hey, you are all also suffering. I know you are, because I've been where you are, and I still supervise the people, that have gone through what you've gone through. This is a tool that can help you. Like it's absolutely, I think it's critical. I think it's absolutely critical that we get more people access to this medicine, for sure.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's a lot of education too, because what I am concerned to, in the community, is that, folks are here, oh, I got shrooms, mushrooms, and then they're not mushrooms, because, I don't know, not say that folks don't have, but, I want us to be educated on this, just like with anything else, right? But the other thought I had was, and I think I lost it, but it was really to talk about, too, going back to mental health and why I think everybody, right? I think I tell my answer to everything. I like to call myself the shroom fairy here in my community. But I like to tell everybody, everyone does need shrooms. The politicians, everyone really needs to consider microdosing and seeing the benefits of it, and understanding of it and the fungi, and not being scared. And because again, people will be quick to be like, no, I'll drink this before they'll take psilocybin. And again, it's just, I think, I lost my thoughts, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, and one of the things, though, that I think people are afraid of the impact psilocybin is going to have on them, because of the hype that they've been washed with. And one of our New Yorkers for Mental Health Alternative board members, he mentioned that if a lot of the people in his community, just don't feel safe enough to put themselves in a situation where they can pull those veils back. Because when you're pulling those veils back and the police are tearing down the street every 5 minutes, and you're hearing people yell. That's not the right spot, and that's really what we have to do. Is it's like culture change. We need to.
Sorry, and that's part of, like, just before I lose it, and that's part of the reason, one of my goals is to put in for a license for a cannabis consumption lounge, but figure out ways to offer other plant-based medicine as well and create a safe space. Like it sounds, consumption lounge, but that's not like how I'm, my vision is not treating it like you think of your average lounge. Again, I want it to be a place for healing, a place for education, a place for even, having events, and having just really where we, dance, like where we're feeling all those, using our sensories, right? But in a peaceful and loving way, and offering that in my community, because again, in my community, we have a large population of Black and Latinos, and so that's a big culture change. Even though, if we really go back, so we probably know our great grandmothers were making psilocybin tea. I'm half Mexican and half Puerto Rican, and so I'm sure there were some ceremonies down somewhere in my bloodline. We just gotta get out of the conditioning that the government and many of these racist white men, that have created a lot of barriers for our plant-based medicines, like the Harry Anslinger of the world, the person who was the one who said marijuana is bad, and the Mexicans and reefer madness, right? So I think, we have to get out, because what we've allowed is our leaders to continue with that messaging. And like with the cannabis legalization in New York State, they keep forgetting it's just a plant. It's just a plant, and they keep treating it like it's alcohol, and it drives me nuts because it's not. And I worry when, we'll talk about that later, but when legalization comes with psilocybin, I worry about pharmaceutical companies coming in and giving us their synthetic version of psilocybin, and why, again, the education is important, and the advocacy, right? And education and advocacy go hand in hand, because you have to educate these politicians, these leaders, right? They'll put a bill in and they don't know shit. But you got to really educate them on top of the community, but that they could advocate at the same time, because we want to be able to home grow our shrooms, right? Our psilocybin or gourmet. We don't want that taken away. Just leave us alone. Don't start making it like alcohol, and so or like pharmaceutical drugs. So, yeah.
That's my main thing. I teach people how to grow all day long. I make it so simple for them, and I give them everything they need except the actual stuff to do it. You're good to go. I do the soil, and then my soil amendments have like composted, mushroom material and stuff like that. And like I have rabbits and ducks, and I live a symbiotic relationship with the things that feed me and pay for my lifestyle and stuff. And I give to them. I take really good care of them, and they take really good care of me. I just take their shit. It's weird. It's weird. It's weird like that. But it's what I do, and it's what, and I don't ever want to not do that either. Like ducks are the best pet companion, whatever. Rabbits too, they're quiet. But ducks are, there's something special about ducks. They eat everything. Yeah, but yeah.
With that, let's continue on to the decriminalization and legalization portion of the event. And what you, Ambra and Pilar, were just talking about is basically the grow, gather, gift ethos that Decriminalized Nature decided to kind of put forward. And that's a really great model, because it's like, don't tell us how to regulate what's in our own gardens. Like, all we want to do is grow these things that we're already having already eating, to leave us alone. Let's just do it. We should be able to give our neighbor our extra bounty, like we do, extra potatoes, extra, so I'm going to pass it over to Corinne and Pilar to continue that.
Yeah, thanks, Pammy. I thought it would be really helpful to talk about the state of legalization in this country and where we are in New York. I don't want to spend a lot of time. I think Pammy, what time do we end? Are we ending at 8? No.
We end at 8:30.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. I just wasn't sure.
We'll still make a little time for a Q&A at the end.
Yeah, it's hard to open up a newspaper or social media without seeing that some tremendous progress is being made in terms of decriminalizing psilocybin. But in fact, what's happened across the country has been fairly modest. So there are only really 2 states that have done a giant step towards decriminalizing psilocybin, and that's Oregon and Washington. There are many steps all over the country, and I'll go over if you're curious, I'll go over some of those with you now, but they fall under different models. So some states have attempted to legalize and regulate psilocybin. Some have proposed research studies and funded research and created work groups to study the effects of psilocybin on various populations. Others have put in place reduced penalties for possession of psilocybin, or a lot of jurisdictions, both cities and states, have deprioritized, meaning that they won't allow state or city funding for the police to actually enforce laws around psilocybin, because as most of you probably know, at the federal level, psilocybin is classified as a Schedule I drug, which means that it has no benefit, no therapeutic benefit, no medicinal benefit. And that's the major thing that people are looking at trying to change, because everything else is pretty much a Band-Aid. So there is an attempt right now, bills at the federal level that would provide grants for research and studies into the benefits of psilocybin for veterans. And some of the more progressive proposals at the federal level include MDMA. So it's really quite modest. So, if you look at the reduced penalty and deprioritizing law enforcement, 15 cities, Washington, D.C., and 2 states have done that. There's pending legislation in 10 states to do it, and there have been a number of failed attempts. Some other miscellaneous kinds of things are in Colorado. There's a law that they recently passed that says that if the Food and Drug Administration approves medicine and deschedules psilocybin, then these medicines would be legal in Colorado just for therapeutic use. So that's kind of like a trigger law that Colorado has. In California, San Francisco just this month passed a resolution that said that they won't be enforcing their laws. But also in Oakland, they passed a resolution calling on the state legislature to act. In Missouri, there's pending legislation that would help people who are dying. It's called right to try legislation that allows people to try psilocybin if they're dying. And then there's a court case in New Hampshire that established that religious use is okay. Growing fresh mushrooms is not manufacturing an illegal drug under that state's laws. But the intent to manufacture and distribute, packaging it, selling it in that way still is illegal. So you can see the measures that have been taken across the country are very modest. Sometimes they're just limited to veterans. A lot of times they're just limited to therapeutic use. It's pretty rare that states have entertained the notion of full adult use of psilocybin. So that's where we find ourselves now in New York. We're at this place where we're watching other jurisdictions take action. We're seeing the news, we're seeing study after study come out showing the benefits, and people are asking the question. So when I met Avery, I had a history of my own substance abuse in the past, that really unhealthy drug use many years ago. And I had been involved in harm reduction and drug reform efforts. So I met Avery, I learned about culinary mushrooms. He told me about how many people were asking about psilocybin mushrooms. And so, we decided maybe we should do something about this. Maybe we should organize mushroom farmers. And I said, well, in order to organize people, you have to have an ask. Why don't we put on a symposium? And so we sponsored, organized and hosted the first statewide symposium on psilocybin legalization in April. And there was so much energy. We had so many sponsors. Psychedelic Sisterhood was one of the sponsors. Pammy was one of our speakers. Psychedelic societies all over the state signed on to support this endeavor. And we thought, we can't just let the energy go. We've got to capitalize on it. And so we formed the New York Psilocybin Action Committee. Throughout this time, I myself was thinking, I used to use a lot of drugs recreationally. And I thought, I'm too busy. My life is too complicated. Psilocybin and LSD, all those things are for young people who don't have trauma in their life. They don't have a lot of trauma in their lives yet to dish up. And so I'm going to stay away from this stuff. Well, then 3 million other people, I read Michael Pollan's book, and I respect him. I always have for his food writing. And I was like, well, maybe I ought to give this a second try. So I thought, well, when I finish this one job that I'm doing now, which is my full-time job is trying to pass a death with dignity law in New York. And I keep losing our advocates who are dying these terrible, painful deaths. Once I finish this super serious job, then maybe I'll do what Michael Pollan did and I'll experiment. Well, last year we lost 7 people in our movement. The deaths were traumatic and horrible. We failed in the legislature. I was fighting with people at work. I was drinking more. The pandemic took a toll. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go on vacation and I'm going to do this. And I'm going to see, I'm going to get to know this medicine and see what it's about. And as I referenced before, it really changed my life. It changed my relationship to my work. It helped me deal with the grief of losing all of these people who were going to die anyway. It's not a surprise. These are not Pilar deaths that are violent and unexpected and untimely. These are deaths that are going to happen. But man, did it change everything. And so it provided me with the more impetus to change things for other people. Because as Avery said, as a cis, white, straight, well, relatively straight woman, I can do these mushrooms. I can ask people for them. I can use them. I can go to a festival where they're being openly consumed and really not risk much at all. But who can't? My friends who are people of color, dying people who are afraid of getting addicted or afraid of the underground market. People who are experiencing tremendous trauma in their lives. These are not folks that are comfortable looking in the underground market for mushrooms and then using them. And so for me, it's so important that we increase access in whatever way possible. I know that there are people who want to decriminalize all drugs because the drug war has destroyed communities and lives and torn families apart and imprisoned people. And that is absolutely true. And at some point, we absolutely need to decriminalize all drugs, full stop, period. But in the meantime, dying people need access. Veterans need access. People dealing with sexual trauma need access. And so I'm looking at this wide variety of legalization models, and I'm saying we can do something in New York in 2023. And how are we going to do that? We're only going to do that if we work together, if we're not calling each other sellouts, if we're sharing our stories, if we feel safe to do that. If we're not coming together and taking collective action. So that's why we formed the New York Psilocybin Action Committee, so that we can get in with the legislature and start figuring out where the pressure points are, start lobbying. So to that end, we've reserved space in the New York State Capitol between March 20th and 24th. We're going to have a big educational display about plant medicines. 12 organizations are going to come set up their stuff at these tables in front of lawmakers in a hallway that they have to pass by 4 times, at least 4 times a day. So every day that week, we'll have people at those tables. And if there's anyone here on this call that wants to be involved in that effort, please let us know. The tables are pretty much filled up, but I can always ask for more tables. I think we put you down for one, Pammy, but yeah, so I just encourage people to join the New York Psilocybin Action Committee. Avery probably, if he hasn't done it already, we'll put a link in the chat box, because for some reason I can't paste anything in the chat box when I'm on Zoom. But we meet monthly. We just had an incredible speaker last week. Her name is Sutton King, and she is part of the Urban Indigenous Collective, and she was talking about the importance of Native voices and Indigenous voices in this advocacy. Making sure that when we legalize psilocybin in New York, it's, as you said, Ambra, it's not the pharmaceutical companies who are synthesizing it. It is the plant, and it's respecting tradition, and it is promoting equity. And so that's one thing that I, for one, will not compromise on. We'll take, we'll probably take some steps towards full legalization in the interest of getting people access ASAP, but it's got to be rooted in equity, and it's got to be rooted in the plant and respect for its origins. So with that, I'll stop and see if folks have any questions for me about the logistics of doing this or anything else. And I know that Pilar has some more to add.
Yeah, I mean, I think all that I would add, and I think that that's great that this action committee was created, and we could talk offline about more like structure, what the structure looks like. I'm very big on like who's making the decision in these coalition alliances and how decisions are made, like are all voices being heard, and how it moves along the campaign. But to add is that, what you're saying is we got to organize, and what gets lost in a lot of these legalization fights, at least in my experience with cannabis, and even like what happened after, people, folks who are not typically accustomed to organizing and community-based organizing, radical organizing in some cases, like the Young Lords or the Black Panthers type thing, they're not familiar with this, but I work with communities, and community-based organizations who are organizers in my full-time job, who specifically are organizing around bad landlords. And so, and there's other things I work on too with coalitions and coalition building, but all that to say is that it goes back to the education and advocacy, and having a lot of people in numbers and groups is really important, because the elected officials, they're also getting these big lobbyist companies that are working for the big corporations, like the pharmaceutical companies, who have offices in Albany or in the city, really always at the ear of the leaders. So it's always important for people, to really get involved and protect the plants and the fungi. That's my thing. Without the plants, we don't have the planet. Without the fungi, we just don't have life. And so I think, plants and fungi we have to protect, because when we're fighting for decriminalization, and especially in cannabis, I'm seeing it starts to be like the plant is being locked up now, and I don't want that to happen with psilocybin and our other plant-based medicines when that time comes. And again, it's really required people coming out in numbers. Like when we, in the tenant movement, a few years, the year 2019, 9 laws that were passed, and that was a lot of organized advocacy. They would turn out in the thousands to Albany to really send a message to the legislators. They were actively involved in shaping the policy, somewhat like how we were with the MRTA, the Marijuana Regulation Taxation Act. But that's what's really key, is getting involved in like the action committee and building out, because these politicians, one, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of them are not really educated on these plants or fungi, and it's a lot, because like I mentioned, they have these pharmaceuticals, so they'll add language to criminalize people, even though they're like, no, but we're decriminalizing. But then there's like this sticky language. So it's really important too that if there's like even, lawyers that are like community based or community movement lawyers who are, also interested to support, because I think it's just always, I like to look at it as the care bears. Everyone has a skill, like the care bears has like that, their little power in the middle. So everyone has something, right? And if we all unite and just have care bears stare, and we could really send the power, it's very powerful, right? And so if we care bears stare together, we could go very big places, I feel.
What a beautiful image, Pilar. Oh, I love that. I want us all to stand together and just like blast our hearts open at the legislation.
That took me back so far when you did that. Oh my God.
Yeah. But I will say, so the last two meetings that we've had, there's always a Zoom component, and people join from Long Island through to Buffalo. And the last two meetings, we've had staff members from Linda Rosenthal and Pat Burke's teams who are writing the psilocybin law proposals, and they are super open to input. So, please tune in so that you can be part of the voices that are heard, because it is absolutely critical that people from every corner of New York and every corner of anywhere that, get heard and share their stories about how they're using and why they're using, because I think that also, I know, Corinne, you've said empathy doesn't really work, but I want to believe with my Care Bear heart that the empathy will help, because hearing people's stories of overcoming trauma and being able to interact with society like a smiling human being because they're microdosing has to mean something. Has to.
Oh, it does. I mean, these stories will move many lawmakers. They just might not get it over the finish line. It is so hard to pass a law in New York. And as Pilar said, the lobbyists, we could do the best job possible and tell all the best stories from every single county. But there are pharmaceutical industry lobbyists there too. And then there's the PTA lobbyists who are probably going to come out again. It's pretty friggin' complicated, right, Pilar?
And I think, what might work, and, we could talk about that in the committee around strategy around how to get, one, elected officials to sign on, but also the community. One thing that was spoken about in the Cannabis Coalition when we were fighting to get the legalization was that when it was decriminalized in 77, that was due to white mothers in Long Island who were like tired of seeing their kids, whatever the issues they had, they wanted to see like marijuana be decriminalized or legalized. And so they organized. And so I think, we have a lot of our, non-Black allies supporting and pushing with us, we could, again, go pretty far, the Care Bears. But it's, again, and building those relationships with politicians, right? Rosenthal, I know very well, Harvey Epstein, who's a good friend of hers, who's also my former ED, who's my mentor. He actually helped me. I ran for office twice for fun. Local office, just so I could talk shit about how fuckery it is. But anyway, so there's support with some legislators on the state and city, like Diana Ayala in City Council is the chair of mental health. And I have a personal relationship. I mean, again, in my community, they call me Pilar la Problema, pero I added con la solución. So Pilar the problem, but with the solution. Like I have a lot of fights, not only about plant-based medicine. And so me and the councilwoman, we know each other, and she's been very supportive of two of my block parties that I've been throwing for Juneteenth. Which it's very big on plant-based medicine. We teach people how to grow marijuana. I wanted to have a panel on psilocybin specifically, but we did talk about plant-based medicine and mental health and mushrooms and marijuana. We had Decrim Nature table there for folks who had wanted information. I forget her name, and it's a shame for me to say that, but there's a woman who's also in the legalization drugs movement and drug harm reduction. She provided some fentanyl strips to test for folks to give out. So like and kids are there. So people are like, Pilar, you're gonna have weed and talk about all this, and like we read a book, it's just a plant to the kids. I wish there was a book about psilocybin and mushrooms for the kids, but I don't know if people are, like just that it's just fungi. But there is a book, it's just a plant by Ricardo Cortez, and it's a children's book to educate children about marijuana without encouraging them to smoke it, right? And it's a beautiful book. So
Oh,
she knows how passionate I am about mental health, especially with the large increase of drug use, and like it's really looking bad in my community. Like people are just fall out in the street, and yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, and we haven't even, I think none of us have mentioned the potential of psilocybin to help break addictive behaviors. I mean, I referenced it a little bit with the weight loss stuff, but my God, people are dropping dead from fentanyl overdoses. And if there's anything that we can do to try to get people into a healthier relationship with drugs, and if psilocybin can help do that, just think of how many lives we can save. I mean, it's just hard. It's horrible how little we've done to address the overdose crisis, and how hard we've had to fight for the little that we have, that we had to fight for decades, Pilar, right? For access to Narcan and naloxone, for these safe consumption centers that open in the first one that opened in New York City. That was a decades long battle.
And the community hates, a lot of the members hated it. And so I find myself trying to educate the community why that is like needed. I'm supposed to go talk to the director there. I want to bring psilocybin tea there. Because before that opened, I was like, I'm just going to go to 125th Street in Lexington and give out tea. And I'll just tell them it's tea. And we'll just leave it like that. People were like, Pilar, I was like, we're not going to put no macro doses in there.
Oh, man. Put it in the water.
Yeah.
I actually might secretly dose my mom, just full transparency, but it was a needed thing. She was so scared for nothing, and I gave her some tea, and I think she knew, but she didn't want me to tell her until after she took it.
Wow.
But I put it in her tea. I put like a 0.2, and I put other different mushrooms, some reishi, some lion's mane, and then some other herbs, and like some other healthy, because she also thyroid. So I put some other healthy benefits, herbs for her, and she was like, "Did you put the magic stuff?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "You were just so worried about it. How do you feel?" And so there's been times where she'd be like, "Can I have some of the tea?"
you straight up blasted her with your Care Bear stare. She's healed.
Not yet, because she's not been actively like doing it. It's like a process, but
Well, yeah, but it's got over the hump.
Hi, I'm sorry. I just have a quick question. I've been loving this conversation right now. I'm a student at the New School. I'm doing like environmental studies right now, so that's kind of more of my perspective on this. Do you guys have any information on how this is like maybe impacting that as well? Because a huge part of what I'm doing, I'm like taking a lot of religion classes as well, where we're talking about like the use of like early psychedelics, especially in like East Asian religions. And so anyways, so basically I'm just curious if you know anything about that, or the impacts of how these psychedelics are also opening people up to the environmental crisis, and if that can be used in the same way of like an eye-opening experience that brings people to like closer to our earth, and like for that empathy like you're talking about for our earth.
I feel like it really did make me extremely empathetic towards the earth, like to a point where like I'm no longer doing construction anymore, but now I'm a farmer. So like it's a whole nother life. I went from buying $10,000 bags and welding and creating fumes and creating, and just trauma and anger and just a bad environment to like the softest side of me, and to being in nature, foraging, I switched to a job that is like $60,000 less than what I make. And I'm so happy every freaking day. I'm a gardener, you know what I mean? Like, and to me, I feel like it does take you there, because there was a time where I wasn't even fucking paying attention to the earth. I wasn't. I was using the earth for for where I needed to get to, and I was so disconnected, the concrete disconnected me. I was living so separately from everything, and there was no joy. There was no just seeing a flower and feeling so emotional. Have you ever looked at a flower and felt extremely emotional? Like, that shit is for me every day now, and there was a time where I'd look at a flower and it was just cold. A flower was something that somebody gives you, they cut the flower, first of all. Now I'm a gardener. You just need to plant that shit, let that shit live. You know what I mean? Like, here we go cutting flowers and they die, and then they shrivel up and they die. You know what I mean? Herbs are great like that, and cannabis, definitely it lives on to me. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, I feel like it made me appreciate the earth. It made me appreciate everything that the earth is meant to give me, and when you know how to grow a plant and why a plant's growing, and then you figure out that you're a plant, you're you know what I mean? Like, it's like, and you just, it's eye-opening, and I treat myself better, and I treat everything else better, and I feel like they don't exactly want us doing that, because they want us to use this earth. They want us to use it till there's nothing left.
No, yeah, I think it's totally about changing the narrative that like nature is our resource and that nature is something that we can manipulate and take from. So I totally agree. And I think that's what I'm most curious. Is there a panel at the I'm sorry, I forget the name, but whatever the panel is that's happening in March of 2023, is there like something that relates this to the environmental issue?
I don't know yet. I mean, we are inviting 12 organizations to do whatever they want at those tables to educate lawmakers about the healing properties of psilocybin. And so an organization might have, I mean, like Avery weaves that kind of stuff into his work all the time. I would imagine that there are some of those organizations that might touch on that issue.
Yeah, and I think when we're lobbying, when it comes to lobby season, where we're talking, having meetings with the electeds on a regular basis, uh, that would come up, and I think, depending on what the committee is deciding, but I think that that's, an important issue to bring back to these legislators, especially the governor, because has spent a lot of time this year talking about the environment and her advocacy around it. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I have bad words for her, so I'm not going to say them right now. But they're related to the subway coming to my community and just the environmental issues, the asthma, and all the other things. But yeah, I think, yeah. But without the planet, without the plants and the fungi, we don't have a planet.
So Bella, have you experienced psilocybin?
Yes, I have taken psilocybin before, but not like I've microdosed.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, especially if you are out in nature, I mean, which I guess comes down to your definition of nature, there is no way to avoid a unifying feeling with everything, and it's
No,
so
absolutely. I think that that's such an important thing, and all of my classes right now are really talking about our approach to the environmental problem as more of like making it something that people are able to digest and something that they're able to like approach is such a huge factor of like allowing us to be like able to live within this, because we're already in it, but like allowing us to like work together to help and heal our earth.
Yeah, I love that as an angle. I mean, it's not something I've directly thought about, but I mean, you know, we one of the things that we are doing is sort of a long range program, but is working with the city to myco remediate some of their brownfield sites. And like I mentioned before, Paul Stamets has studied psilocybin in its ability to extract heavy metals from contaminated sites. And, you know, so it's, you know, yes, taking it and like having it impact your mind and creating that feeling of oneness, but it's also like, you know, as an organism, something that can concretely help clean up, you know,
Oil spills.
a disaster. It's really, you know, it's an incredible mycelium fungi is an incredible kingdom, you know, it really is. And when you start going down that rabbit hole of you know, what else can a mushroom do, it really blows your mind. And I think I almost want to like that Ricardo Cortez, it's just a plant. I don't even I think you can't put just, because like, you know, I would just say it's fungi, you know, something like that, because like it's not just anything, because it's so much.
I agree.
Any more questions? We have about 3 minutes left, but you know, if anyone wants to stay a little bit later, that's okay. Yeah, just
I've got to go, but I do want to put a plug in for folks really getting on the mailing list for the New York Psilocybin Action Committee, and also to follow us on Instagram, because Avery is like a wizard. He puts up so much amazing content every day, and really staying in touch with the legalization movement and just all of the arguments for doing this. It's been an incredible experience for me, and I was already sold. So, you know, follow us on Instagram. You can't find us on Facebook because Facebook is horrible and they have hidden us because we're advocating for the legalization. I don't know why, but
so, well, because I use the word psilocybin in the title, and it'll say like, oh, it looks like you're looking up a drug. Do you need help? Like, why don't you contact a therapist? But that being said, so Corinne and Pammy and I are on the board of the New Yorkers for Mental Health Alternatives, which has its own website. And I don't think we've officially like expanded the board from just Corinne and I, but like it's that's something that we'll be able to create a Facebook group. Actually, I could probably just do that now, but like we'll be able to create a group and it will be findable. And, you know, we really are advocating for those alternatives to the traditional routes of mental health. So it's, you know, it's you know, breath work, it's drumming, you know, it's just yoga and walks in nature, but it's also, you know, psilocybin, LSD, and laughter.
yeah.
Tara, did you have a question?
Did it work?
Yeah, now I can.
Oh, I don't know why it wouldn't unmute me. Well, I just wanted to point out something interesting really quick. We have a really close friend of ours that, ironically, we've followed each other back and forth from California to New York. She currently goes to RPI. She'll be moving to Washington, actually, and she's very into all of this, but she is looking to be more environmentally friendly. And just on the topic of that, she's actually working on building roller skates from mycelium. So it's pretty interesting. And I just wanted to share that with y'all, and I'll connect y'all with her if you want to. She's a close friend of ours, also our cat sitter here and there. So yeah, like this is the future in many different ways, and it can definitely impact the planet, you know, for the better. And our mental health, of course. But yes,
open our minds, open our hearts. That's more meant to be connected on a deeper level, and to work together. There's no competition. We're just meant to share our love and our gifts with each other. And like you were saying, the healing aspects, like we just had an event Saturday and we did sound healing and we did like yoga and like breathing and meditation and past life regression, and we did mess with the chocolates. And so like these are all healing things that, you know, more people just need to know about. Mhm. So thank you. This has been a beautiful discussion, and excited to connect more with all of you.
Thank you, Pammy. Thank you for putting it together.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Happy magic mushroom day, everybody.
Oh yeah.
Enjoy that.
The suppression, the use of marijuana